about advertising on video content, or even using video in advertising. Differences in video measurement across devices, channels, platforms, differences in video ad formats, sizes, lengths, and creative remind us that despite the seamless ubiquity of video in our connected lives, video is not really an advertising medium per se, although perhaps it should be. It's far too diffuse. In any event, eMarketer pegged online video spending this year at $9.8 billion, maintaining a sustained 1 to 2 billion of growth year over year through 2020. The researcher also pegged sustained TV growth at a similar level through 2020. Something seems wrong with that, to me anyway. Everyone seems to agree that video is the future of TV, but growth in lockstep with TV doesn't sound like real progress, maybe, at least according to that report. Now, that's not to say that video advertising isn't getting easier or better. It absolutely is, especially as new technologies like programmatic video continue their forward march and new opportunities like influencer marketing and live present themselves to marketers. At Oma Video today, we will cover many of these new opportunities, including showcasing exciting cases from brands like Nair, who will follow me shortly. We will also discuss the new rules of video creation, mobile video spending. We'll go in depth into the evolving world of video syndication across social media platforms, and we'll also delve into live streaming, the opportunity there for brands and media companies. And of course, as Ken mentioned, we also feature a fascinating interview today between MediaPost editor-in-chief Joe Mandisi and Tony Pace, chairman of the Association of National Advertisers. So without any further ado, let's please get started. First today, we have a presentation showcasing video as an effective tool to reach influencer audiences. You might have heard that influencer marketing is hot. Well, influencer marketing leveraging video can be a home run. Here to tell us how are Robin Safran, Group Brand Manager of hair removal brand Nair, and Nadia Harrison, Senior Partner Group Planning Director of Maxis. Please welcome both to the stage.
Thanks to all of you for joining us here today. I am Robin Safran, Group Brand Manager at Church & Dwight. And I'm joined here on stage by Nadia Harrison, Group Planning Director at our media agency, Maxis. As Ross said, we're here today to discuss the challenge of marketing millennials and how in our most recent campaign for Nair, we used video influencers to inspire young women to think a little bit differently about hair removal and about our brand. We had a lot of fun working on this campaign together, so I hope you'll enjoy hearing some more about it, and hopefully you'll have some takeaways and insights that you find relevant to your work as well.
So looking across the room, I think it's safe to say, we've got a variety of different disciplines, a lot of different experience in the room. No matter what the discipline is that you work on, I think we can all understand and agree that building brands is really hard, right? Changing brand perceptions, it's even harder. We're very lucky at Maxis. We have, we've had the honor of having Church & Dwight as a client now for over 11 years. Robin has been with Church & Dwight for 7 years. I have also had the pleasure of working alongside her on Nair for 3.5 years. So that kind of continuity in our industry is rare. It's almost unheard of. So it's great. It's been great for us because it has enabled us to really share the same goals, share a lot of the same vision for our products. And along with that, though, there's still that constant pressure to innovate, constant pressure to sort of have fresh new solutions and ideas that really do meet that changing consumer environment. So Nair is a really interesting case study we're going to share with you because it is a brand that needed to change brand perceptions in a really challenging environment where digital and mobile and social are really leading the way.
Okay, so before we get into some of the campaign details, by a show of hands, who here has heard of Nair? All right, so not surprising. We actually have 95% aided brand awareness, but that said, I do want to just take a couple minutes to tell you a little bit about the background of the brand. Nair was actually named for a hybrid of the phrase no hair, and as it seems like most of you know, we're a trusted brand for at-home hair removal. For over 75 years, we've been an expert and an innovator in the category, and what actually started as a single formula, single scent depilatory lotion has grown into a wide portfolio of products for women, and you may find this surprising, we actually have a men's line as well. Back in 1975, we won a Clio Award for our Nair for Short Shorts campaign that you heard at the top of the slide. And we really leveraged that equity over the last few years. In our most recent campaign, Nair Like Never Before, we juxtaposed our latest Nair innovations with the Nair of the 1970s. But with such a rich heritage, definitely came some baggage, and namely the perception that this was a brand that mom might have used. But if you asked mom about it, she might remember it as being messy or smelly, hard to use, not necessarily a ringing endorsement. So we were definitely faced with the challenge of needing to modernize the brand and really establish ourselves as a hair removal solution that met the needs of today's millennial woman. So, how do you go about modernizing a brand? At the onset, I think, of any campaign, we all lay out objectives. So that's sort of what we did first. We tried to establish some brand goals, and we also wanted to take stock of sort of some market challenges as well. So from a brand perspective, we knew we wanted to grow the category, grow the brand, and strengthen Nair's #1 market share. We also wanted to position the brand as a longer-lasting alternative to shaving and really reinforce some of our product benefits, especially some of the ones that had evolved and changed over the years. So the fact that we now have added skincare benefits, the ease of use, and the approved fragrances. We also wanted to increase awareness on our new line of Nair waxes, especially since our equity was so deeply rooted in depilatories. Then from a market environment standpoint, we knew we needed to break through the clutter of the beauty category with a more limited budget. So we tend to think of ourselves within what is arguably a niche category. We define hair removal as depilatories, waxes, and bleaches. Yet we know that women primarily are removing hair with razors. So when you think a little more broadly about the shaving category, that's where we're up against big brands like Gillette Venus. Take it one step broader into the much broader beauty space, and you're talking about the Doves and all of the cosmetic brands. So we knew there was a lot of noise and a lot to compete with there. We wanted to bring in new users, so focusing on that millennial woman. Yet we knew that hair removal wasn't necessarily something that she openly discussed, nor was it an enjoyable part of her beauty routine. So most women see hair removal as a chore or necessity, not necessarily something that they enjoy doing. So we really needed to find a way to engage her in the conversation.
So knowing this on the marketing side, we really needed to find a way to build a relationship with these millennial women who grew up in a digital age, and who are looking for modern products, and we needed to show them that we were worth incorporating into their beauty routine. So an important starting point for us was taking a step back, grounding ourselves in the landscape itself. How are millennials consuming content? Where are they engaging with brands? I think the shift to digital and online video is no surprise to any of us here in this room. I think as you start to see the numbers and the sheer scale and time spent with online video, it does get surprising. The latest stat I think I saw was around over 11 hours a week millennials are spending with digital video. And when you think about YouTube specifically, they reach 94% of women 18 to 34. And for the beauty category, even more so, there's a really strong preference for YouTube over traditional TV. So when you think about millennial women and their beauty habits, they are always looking to improve their habits and their routines. They are fearful, though, of bad beauty experiences, so they are relying on those influencers and their peers to kind of find new products, learn how to use them, and really understand, what's worth incorporating into their routine. Another important part of the planning process for us was thinking about the rules of engagement for millennials. There's a lot of information out there and a lot of ways you should and shouldn't engage them, right? We really boiled our learnings down to three key guiding principles, if you will. We call them the 3 T's, that were key in building the campaign strategy that Robin will take you through. The first of those is recognizing that millennials are open to engaging with brands, but they don't want ads. More so than any other generation, what they really want are experiences. They want stories, and they want those stories to be tailored to their own personal interests and passions. They also want, and in some ways they really expect, that brands be really relevant and timely in terms of when and where you're speaking to them. And then last but certainly not least, they want brands that are very authentic and kind of true in how they communicate.
So those 3 T's were all driving factors in our strategy. We really wanted to show women that Nair reveals beautiful, smooth skin that lasts, so she could be ready for anything. That really taps into the insight that when women have unwanted body hair, it affects their confidence and really limits their spontaneity. It serves as a barrier for them to spending time with the people they want to spend time with and doing the things they want to do. It also allowed us to elevate the conversation a little bit. It went to more of a lifestyle, empowering women to embrace life and be spontaneous. And thirdly, it gave us the opportunity to tap into some usage occasions, things like season. So we worked closely with our agency partners and came up with the idea of a summer bucket list. We all start the summer with a long list of things that we want to do while the weather is nice, and we really wanted to bring that to life for the consumer. The idea was to encourage young women to embrace summer with Nair and be ready to check items off of their bucket list as the opportunities presented themselves. We position Nair's long-lasting results as the secret to making sure you get the most of your summer, because when you have smooth, beautiful skin, you're truly ready for anything. We activated this with a consumer promotion and across several influencer partnerships.
And knowing what we did about YouTube and influencers, we felt like that really was the ideal way to launch the summer bucket list and really modernize the face of Nair. It's not to say, though, we didn't go in with realistic expectations. We knew we couldn't afford the Michelle Pfans of the world. We also know how easy it is to get lost in sort of the sea of the same in YouTube, particularly in the beauty space. It's very competitive and cluttered. So we really sought partners who had loyal, established following. We also wanted partners who had built-in viewership and unique positioning. And what we found in vetting different partners is that Defy was really the perfect partner for us. They're already an established go-to resource for millennials when it comes to content and entertainment. They also have a huge following across a variety of YouTube channels, one being the Clever Style channel that we worked with for Beauty Break. The hosts of Beauty Break, Lily Marston and Jocelyn Davis, are just really fun people, and they embody that ready for anything spirit we were looking for. And then timing-wise, it was great because they were also looking to launch a spinoff of their already established Beauty Break program called Beauty Trippin', where they would get out of the studio once a week and go out and kind of hit the road and do something fun and new and adventurous in the beauty world. So we were able to partner with them as that launch partner, and I think the best way to kind of show you what we did and give you a flavor for how it came to life is to show you a quick video. So why don't we run that, and then I can talk through some of the process and how we got there.
What? Wait, we're gonna wax ourselves right now? Okay, guys, so Nair is sending us to cross things off our bucket list. So what are we gonna do today? I don't know, we are here to turn you guys into models.
You girls are gonna go in Paris with us today.
Oh my gosh! They gave us our Nair Nourish. It smells like cherry blossoms. I think they're trying to tell us something with these Nair Wax Ready strips. 3, 2, 1. Wow! That was so much easier than having to make an appointment somewhere, go somewhere, talk to someone while
They're so much fun. I keep saying I want to be their best friend. So as you can see, we had, you got a kind of a peek at the 2 episode integrations that we had with the Beauty Trippin' Girls. The first one was the modeling class. So the whole idea there was we send them to modeling school, but before they hit the runway and learn how to kind of strut their stuff, they try Nair Wax Ready strips. So Jocelyn, you saw her in the car. She was trying out those Ready strips, and she showed how easy it was to use them, which was a key product benefit. The second video was parasailing. So we sent the girls to the beach, and before they went on their parasailing adventure, we needed to help them get swimsuit ready. So they featured the Nair Nourish, the new depilatory product, and that was a really organic way. We thought they did a great job showcasing the products and the different benefits that Nair now offers. But if we take a step back and kind of think about how we got there in terms of the timeline and the process, the timing of these videos is really important to us. Nair is a seasonal product, so summer season is critical for us. So we really needed to kind of head that up, and we wanted to launch before Memorial Day. So we had to make sure we had time leading up. So we had an 8-week lead time from kickoff to launch. It's not to say influencer campaigns can't come to life quicker than 8 weeks. We just padded it to make sure we had plenty of time. And then we started that process by first figuring out who would be our guest influencer that would join the girls. So you saw Lily and Jocelyn. They're the hosts. They're always part of the show. But what they do is they'll bring in guest influencers from time to kind of mix things up. And in our case, it was great because it also gave us additional reach by bringing Evelina Berry into the fold. She's an established beauty influencer, so she also brought her followers in. Once we kind of figured out who the influencers would be with Defy and with the brand, then we asked the influencers to kind of say, well, all right, what would your ideal summer bucket list activities be? What do you actually want to do if we're going to send you out and do these activities? And that was really fun because we got a whole wide variety of things. And really our only ask to them was that they be kind of aspirational in what they provide to us. I mean, obviously it needed to be relevant to the brand, but also think about things that are aspirational on their bucket list. Going to the beach is great, but we really wanted something that would inspire women to also be ready for anything and cross things off their bucket list. So we wanted to do things like parasailing, or at one point we talked about swimming with sea otters or sandboarding. So we had all kinds of fun ideas out there. Once we aligned, though, on these 2 ideas, the modeling class and the parasailing, what we did, there was 2 key things we did that I think are important to talk about. One is the influencers came to us with what they called a beat sheet, or really a creative concept. That was where they were able to sort of describe their vision for the video and how it would come to life with key talking points for our feedback. And then at the same time, we worked with the brand and we created sort of a do's and don'ts for the brand to give to the influencers. And those two documents were so critical in terms of aligning on our goals and how we were going to bring this to life. That is sort of what made us all feel confident going into the filming, and allowed Robin and I to kind of release control and feel good that the influencers were going to do the brand integrations in a way that felt very organic and also very brand friendly. So, I mean, I think you guys can tell the influencers had a great time crossing items off their bucket list with Nair. Viewers also ate it up. In here and in the video we talked about, they have 1.6 million views. It's actually, as of last night, it's up to 1.8 million views. There's over 46,000 likes on YouTube, almost 5,000 comments, all very positive in nature. Nair also reaped the benefits. We saw over 23% lift in favorability. That's 6 times the Nielsen benchmark for lift in favorability. And then last but not least, the brand saw a 4% increase in sales. More tactically, Robin talked about the summer bucket list promotion. This was a great way to kind of kick that off. That promotion ended up getting over 1,000 entries. And in general, this program helped kind of boost the brand's owned social channels. So Instagram is our priority social channel. Aside from YouTube, we saw 106% growth in our Instagram followers over the course of the promotion. So overall, really successful program. We were really pleased with it, and hopefully you think so as well.
So in wrapping up, Working with influencers isn't always easy, and we've actually sort of experienced both. We've definitely had some partnerships that haven't gone as well as this one. But we wanted to sort of lay out some guidelines to consider when you're perhaps doing your own influencer campaigns. Number one would be to really tap into existing communities. Nadia talked about that. You know, partnering with Clever and Defy, they already had that built-in audience, really engaged viewers. So that was important to us so that we didn't have to buy all of our views. Second would be to identify talent that reflects the tone and feel of the brand. Really, what I think made this work so well was that it just fit. They did such a good job of authentically integrating the products, having fun with the products, and it just came across in a very natural and authentic way. And thirdly, this was probably one of the most challenging for us. We're a somewhat conservative organization, but really being able to, and again, Nadia alluded to this, really being able to release some of that control and trust the influencers and our partners that they're going to represent the brand in a way that's really organic and fits.
And in terms of being able to kind of release that control and really trust that, that this will come to life the way you want it to, it's really important that you set clear roles and expectations up front in the planning process. So this sounds obvious, but I really, really can't stress it enough. Having alignment across the agency, the client, and the influencers in terms of the strategic role of the program and what you actually want consumers to get out of those branded integrations. So do you want them to do you want to just get your product on their radar? Is it about awareness? Do you want them to understand how to use your product? You know, what is it that you want them to take away? And the more specific you can be, the easier the overall process is going to be. Think about the production quality. Is it important for you to have on-camera engagement more important than voiceover? Think about the level of branding and the level of integration that you're going to have, the specific do's and don'ts. I'm talking as specific as do hold the product facing forward when showing it on camera so that consumers can actually see what you're talking about, or don't show the product in partial form. So if there's an applicator, make sure that that's featured when you're showing the product. Very specific if those are important to your brand. And then even things like the number of revisions, the types of revisions you'll be allowed, and also legal. Think about legal and the FTC requirements and those guidelines that you need to meet to make sure you're compliant. And then last but not least, while views are obviously important for any video campaign, and you certainly want to build in guaranteed views to your influencer campaigns, it's also really important that you think about what success is beyond those views and how you're going to measure that success. Oftentimes, particularly with YouTube, you do need custom brand studies to sort of be able to get at those larger metrics of favorability or intent. So just think about that going in and how you're going to do that. So that's it. I think we'll leave you with these guidelines, and we can open it up for questions.
Great. Thanks, Robin. Thanks, Nadia. You guys can applaud. No? Yeah, questions from the audience. If you do have a question, please do stand and tell us who you are and where you work. And I see one in the back, right here.
Hello, my name's Liberty, and I'm from I'm from Liberty Interactive Marketing out of Florida. Thank you very much for this case study. It was really well-rounded. I'm curious, how did you measure your brand lift? Because those are oftentimes, hard to measure. Brands don't know how to do that. Oftentimes, brands don't even have a brand that's defined like Nair does. So really, my part A is, how did you define the brand lift? And second, sales. How did you determine that there was an increase in sales during that time period?
So I can take the lift piece. So we partnered with Nielsen, and we did the online brand effects study. So it's a custom brand study. It's a one-question survey. And we literally just asked the question, what is your opinion of Nair? And the options are very favorable, unfavorable, there's 5 options. And it measures control versus exposed. That study can't typically run on YouTube, but the beauty of a partnership with a brand like Defy is they also have a website property. So a lot of that content also lives on their website, and you can serve those custom studies on their website. So we were able to get at it kind of around the beat around the bush and kind of got there through the website.
And the sales, the volume lift was generated from Nielsen consumption. So we don't have a marketing mix analysis on this to say that this was solely the driver of that volume lift, but overall during that time period, we saw that 4% lift in sales year over year.
Great. Any more questions? One? Yeah, go ahead. Thanks.
Hey, Ken Nelson, Odyssey. My question is, I guess for you, Nadia, when you mentioned you've run a number of influencer campaigns, some have worked, some have not worked, and I'm curious when you approach a campaign like this, obviously there's organic reach that you get from the influencers. Do you budget a portion of the budget for promotion of these videos, or do you just go on the expectation that it's whatever the reach is getting guaranteed or estimated, that's what you're going to get?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think it kind of depends on the partner. In this case, we didn't need to budget for additional distribution because we knew it was built into the plan and we were getting that guarantee. There have been instances where, with other partners and other ways we have run these where we do kind of supplement with like a TrueView type campaign, and that way we distribute content and make sure we get more views. But in this instance, we did not need to.
I have a quick question, I think. What were some of the deliverables from the girls, like the hosts, in terms of like other media and platforms and things like that?
In terms of the social,
Like
social channel?
Yeah.
So we asked them to prioritize Instagram. They posted, Clever, from the Clever handle, posted leading up to each of the videos. And then Evelina, who is the guest influencer, she also posted on her channel. So it was a total of 6 social posts leading up, and then they also gave us some added value tweets or added value posts from Lily's handle, Lily's own personal handle, and Snapchat. So that was kind of a fun addition.
Were they and they were interacting with like the comments that they were getting and stuff like that?
Yeah, they were great. I mean, that's the sign of a true great partnership, right? They were engaged, they were having fun with it. They responded to the comments, and I think they genuinely had a strong affinity for the brand. So that was key.
All right, great. Well, Nadia, Robin, thanks very much. Okay, so next up we're going to have a panel on online video complexity and creative, which I'm going to lead. So I would like to invite my panelists to come to the stage once we set it up. It's going to take like a couple seconds. Actually, I don't need this. Rob, will you take my mic? Hi, Caitlin. How you doing? Did you see the questions?
Yes.
Okay. They're generally okay? I mean, a little bit better? Okay. Cool.
Because a lot of those, I would have 2 things to say.
Yeah, I noticed.
So I
Well,
appreciate
you know, it's funny. I just need to look. That's, a lot of things going on this week.
Oh, I'm sure it's
Yeah.
insanity.
Yeah. All right, guys, come on up. Patrick and Caitlin. Oh, okay. So this panel is about online video complexity and creative. And I'd like to start off by just asking my panelists here to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about who they are and what their responsibilities are at their companies. So you can go down the line. Go ahead, Patrick.
All right, so I'm Patrick Bennett. I'm Executive Creative Director at iCrossing. And obviously I lead the creative here in New York and for East. And you know, online video has been this amazing journey for, I don't know, maybe like 11 years, where back in the day when I worked on Verizon, I did that Richer, Deeper, Broader campaign where we were running around trying to understand what people were using the internet for back in 2007 and 2 years after YouTube launched. You know, so where we were then and where we are now are two completely different things. But some of the truths remain the same, and we try to just make extremely engaging, exciting video. That's it.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Bergman. I'm the Director of Content and Creative at MediaCom. What do I do? How do I explain this? I make things. I make things all day long. I think about making things and then I make them. And I have the pleasure of working with a lot of clients that allow me to have a lot of fun and freedom with what it is that I present. A lot of trust in that, I think, is key to that relationship. So one of my main clients is Strayer University, who are a prime example of a client that has allowed me to do all kinds of things with their business that you wouldn't traditionally think at face value. And I have a confession that I am a Snapchat addict, so I will probably discuss that at some point during this panel.
Indeed we will. Keith, go ahead.
My name is Keith Grossman. I am the Global Chief Revenue Officer at Bloomberg Media. And well, in the same vein as you, I monetize things, right? And so we have 2,400 journalists throughout the world in 153 countries worldwide. We have 5 different platforms in which we distribute content on, whether it ranges from digital to events, to television, to radio, to print. And you know, for us, what I think is the most exciting moment is that you know, the platforms are becoming increasingly irrelevant, and the experiences become increasingly more relevant.
Yes, but what about the advertising? So anyway, want to begin. Well, this panel has a premise, right? It says that complexity and frustration reign when it comes to video advertising. Well, do you agree with that? Why or why not?
I would say yes. One of my favorite sayings, and I say it all day long ad nauseum, is the struggle is real. I'm sure you may be familiar with it, but sometimes the struggle is needlessly real. It does not need to be real. And I feel like this is an example of the struggle being needlessly real. I feel like we've created this monster. We're all complicit in this. And we need to have a better consumer experience, full stop. If that's from the creative side of it, I feel like that's an obligation that I strive to achieve every day. And I hate the reaction of watching a piece of content and a piece of pre-roll plays, and I'm literally sitting there going like, damn you, advertising. I work in advertising. I should not be saying, you know, cursing advertising. I love advertising. So however we can make that experience less cluttered, less frustrating, less ad blocking, you know, kind of gunking that experience up for the consumer, that should be our North Star across the board.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more, obviously. I think that we've spent so many years thinking about, you know, how to get, you know, these little empty boxes in front of the right person at the right time. We've spent so much money on that. We've spent so much time, like, figuring out all the details of that, we haven't spent as much time thinking about what's going to go inside the box. So when the box shows up in front of somebody, are they going to love it? Are they going to respond to it? And are they going to resent it and be like, oh, advertising is the worst? So, you know, is it difficult? Is it complicated? Yeah, and it's so overcomplicated because there's so many things to think about. There's so many variables. There's platforms. There's different audiences consuming content in different ways. There's and talking about Snapchat, I mean, I think for most people when they look at Snapchat, they're looking at it as a photo or visual platform. I don't think it's that at all. I really think it's a completely new kind of communication. It's closer to like hieroglyphics, people speaking in pictures than it is just like showing videos. So, you know, this understanding of the platforms, how people are using the platforms, and what people are going to want to see just creates a wealth of data and a wealth of headache, and it is extremely complicated.
I mean, I would argue, though, that, and I agree with you, it's complicated today, right? But I had this weird moment last week where I have a 2.5-year-old daughter, and I was watching the Beatles' Yellow Submarine, right? And if you've seen this video, right, when it came out, it was the most progressive, like advancement in television that you could get in terms of creating content and putting it out there. And my daughter's fascinated by it. She's 2.5, so she's fascinated by anything that's video, right? But I was looking at it and I was thinking to myself, wow, it is so rudimentary. Like, you could do that, I could do this on the filters of my Instagram feed today. And in 1960, this was as advanced as it goes. And I think that what we're facing today is the fact that we're in this moment where so much has changed, right? Broadband has allowed, digital video to essentially become ubiquitous. Very easy in the States, very easy in Asia, right, specifically. And as people are rushing in, right, like everyone's tripping over, like, what's the next best thing to do? And we haven't seen a lot of standardization. And the one thing that we should, as marketers, do, and I think this is important, is step back for a second and realize that we are our best allies and our worst enemies, right? We tend to talk in extremes. This is dead, that is dead. This is amazing, this is the future, that is not. And things tend to splinter, move more slowly, right? Scalability and adaptability tend to lag versus the one person or the two people that do something really great the first time through. But when the scalability happens, it happens in such a nice fashion that you could slowly start making things implementable, right? And so the same frustrations occur in every medium, in every sort of area as it becomes new, because everyone just rushes into it. And I agree with you 100%. People have to discover, how do you create content for these experiences? The worst thing for us as a publisher happens to be when somebody runs, a 300 by 250 on a mobile screen, or a television pre-roll on on a video, right? And the most frustrating thing to me is a 30-second pre-roll on a 30-second video clip, right? Which is frustrating, but these are things that will correct themselves over time when people step back and they realize, what the data is informing them as to what true good consumer experiences are.
Thank you. I wanted to ask the creatives here a couple pointed questions about if creatives were in charge of the whole picture.
Oh, I am.
Okay, we were. Good. Fair enough. What could be better or easier about video for you? How could it improve?
I mean, I think the hardest part of it is, you're trying to stay true to like the right side of your brain where you're the artist, anew, and you're trying to honor that while you're filming this, if it's something original, or you're in the edit process. And then when you get to the part where you're at the delivery of it, you're like, okay, now let me cut this all down, as opposed to being proactive and thinking about what does the 10 look like, the 15, the 30, the 2 minute, as opposed to just taking if the longest form of it, if you will, is the 2 minute, and then trying to truncate that. Are you really getting the whole story as you fully intended it from the beginning out there, the way it needs to be told? Because you should not just be chopping it down to 10 seconds, because then who killed JR is just out there.
Yeah.
You may need to Google that if you were not born. I'm a TV junkie.
I think that there's, and this might be a little bit contradictory to the last thing I said, but I think that for creatives now, in a way, things are better than ever, because we can tell the stories that we've always wanted to tell, however we want to tell them. And if we can work with our clients, and I was going to say convince, but collaborate with our clients to get to the understanding of what's going to be the right story to tell in the right place, then we can make magical stuff, right? Not just we're filling boxes. So, Ben Jones over at Unskippable Labs, a friend of mine, and they do amazing stuff there, and they post it out on their YouTube page where they do lots of tests, right? And they test how, what's the big thing of how long should a video be, right? Everybody always asks, how long should a video be? And, you have the clients who are just committed. The long-form video cannot be longer than 90 seconds. This is just arbitrary number. If you're in TrueView, it has to be X length. And they did some great tests, and they showed pretty definitively that people will watch long videos. The highest performing spots on YouTube averaged 3 minutes in length in 2015. So it's not about filling boxes and hitting metrics and doing these things. Video, and what's amazing about video, is about telling great stories and emotional stories that are going to resonate with people and compel them to have the types of actions and emotions that you want them to have about your brand. You know, the work from Nair, if they're gone, is a perfect case in point. So, you know, in that way, it's easier, right? But then it's like, okay, you have to start, okay, where am I going to tell this story? Am I going to tell this story in Snapchat? That's a completely different form of communication. Am I going to tell this story in YouTube? Am I going to tell this story in Facebook and fill it with like big pieces of text and have that kind of impactful feel? All these things kind of have to come to bear, but they give us so much power to tell great stories.
And I think now that the platforms are kind of all copying each other, it's like if you wanted to snap something, it had to be in that moment. It was a Snapchat. Now it's like you can upload something retroactively. You can add stickers and emojis to everything. It's like all the platforms are kind of stealing from each other and borrowing. And I don't know if that's making a better experience or a blurred experience.
But this is where the marketplace starts maturing, right? And you start realizing that Instagram sees the opportunity that Snapchat presents, so they copy it. Snapchat sees the opportunity that Instagram has, so they copy it. And you start getting the basis of a standardization. I mean, to your point earlier, and this is where I find it absolutely fascinating. You know, I hold a belief that content online is only sponsored when it's bad. Yes. Right? Otherwise, the consumer actually sees content online as content, right? When you looked at the Nair examples, like those were amazing examples. I actually was laughing this morning because my wife told me to shave, and I said I will not shave, and now I follow Nair, and I feel like it's like someone laughing at me. But you know, it really just becomes sponsored or like offensive when the content is bad. And you know, we get into this conversation about data, and what is data's role in creative. And I would argue that data should directionally tell or inform creative where they should be going, right? So you know that you target a certain area, and it should support the success of creative. But when you start thinking about this has to be this has to be that, and you force creatives into a box, you all of a sudden find yourself in the ad blocking world of consumers just start rebelling. And so I agree, like I think we're in this moment where creatives will all of a sudden find that the most powerful thing you have is storytelling, right? The best way to engage with a consumer is storytelling. There's no way to prescribe storytelling. If you look at amazing novels over time, the reason that they last is not the platform, it's the story, right? They connect with people, you know, regardless of what it is. But today, we now have this moment where you could see and you could measure success after the fact, and then that could help inform further decisions down. But we have to get out of where we are today, which is this moment where it is like a creative must only be X, and this must only be Y, and you can only use the color blue, and you can't do this.
Yeah, I just want to build on that and kind of jump ahead for a second, if that's all right.
Yeah.
But, you know, the thought on that is that, well, maybe this great storytelling is somehow like mutually exclusive from some of the programmatic video that we see on the horizon. And I disagree with that, right? I think that if you look at some of the work that Unilever has been doing, where they've created these amazing stories out of like, I think they had like 7,000 clips that came together and showed just the specific things for just a specific audience, but still in this beautiful style and still told a complete, you know, sort of linear story that someone could experience. Yeah, you know, it's going to be more difficult to, you know, continue to tell great stories when you have so many variables that might switch out, you know, at runtime. But it's definitely doable.
So Keith's brought up standardization a few times now. How are you feeling about, as creatives, about that as something being key to the onward march?
I don't know if it's ever going to happen. I feel like everybody's going to want to have that thing that's different. So that's why God invented Post-its, and I could put a list of every single way I have to export something or deliver something, because there will be no unified form of measure for how we create these things. But I think this goes back to your earlier point of we need to just tell stories, full stop, period, end of sentence. If we're trying to be led by the length of something, I think that's going to limit the storytelling.
So again, a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to buying, creating, deploying video ad campaigns, falls on the agencies. So can anyone here, creatives, give us just a sense of just how time-consuming executing a video campaign can be? Can you tell us?
That's another struggle is real type of a thing, I have to tell you.
Just an example.
No, I think it's all in the edit process when you're trying to just get through that, and then you're trying to export out for all these different things. And if you're going against a buy, it's like, okay, like right now I'm in the middle. I just did a shoot last week with Strayer. I have all this footage. We're going through post. We know how long these videos were looking to be, but I also made sure I had some flexibility because we got some amazing, really beautiful B-roll that I think is really gonna help tell the story. And if it means we go 15 seconds over, we're gonna go 15 seconds over. Like it's gonna be what it's gonna be. We need to tell that story appropriately. And that being said, there's all these other pieces that work with it, more in the banner ad space, but it's what does that creative look like? And it can't just be a logo and a Pantone and a color scheme slapped on there. It needs to work hand in hand with the story we're telling. So it needs to be a holistic approach. And I feel like that's always the delicate balance of like the science and the magic trying to work together with the data and the creative. So, and then the buy, of course. I can't just go make up, some War and Peace length, Scorsese epic opus of a piece of content that Strayer suddenly needs to help me produce. But, I think there needs to be some flexibility there when it comes to distributing and outputting these things.
Yeah, iCrossing is kind of interesting because we have creative and we also have media in the same place, and we sit on the same floor. So what that allows us to do is have less headaches on the back end of the shoot and figure a lot more of that stuff out before we even shoot. So knowing where we're going to be, knowing who we're going to be talking to, knowing how the stuff up front, plan for it so that when we're shooting, and it could be either a traditional kind of shooting process where we're going outside and we're working with a production company and directors and do that, or it could be your run and gun kind of shoot process that we have now that we just bang out in the studio. Either way, we're able to take all of that input in from chatting with our media partners and inform what we shoot, inform the edit, and inform the kind of conform and output at the end.
So with your answers in mind here for the last question, how much of the complexity and frustration with video that we're talking about here do you think actually falls at the feet of the agencies?
Define agency.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, define agency, because again, on the creative side, having these media guys there and having the output and having the measurement and the analytics kind of right there, and the strategy that can kind of like ingest some of the stuff that we're getting from media, well, yeah, it all falls on us, right? Because we have no partners. But I think that's not the same for everybody else.
Right.
I feel like I'm also in the unique position of being a creative within a media agency. I've come from a television background. I've come from working at creative agencies. So when I first arrived at MediaCom, it was kind of like, what's going on with all these? But it's actually informed my workflow and how I work, because if I need counsel from someone that is so experienced in media, in digital, in social, they're all a desk away. I could walk right over there. And to your point about being proactive and knowing exactly what you're doing before you go out and shoot, as opposed to we don't have any of this material or I don't have any of these assets, I can make sure I have everything aligned before I go out on a shoot.
Yeah, and it's 2016, but we still have the issue of working with some offline partners that are going to be delivering assets to you for digital campaigns, and you have to figure out what to do with it, right? So, one of our clients is DirecTV, and now Gray isn't their agency, but obviously we used to get plenty of work from Gray that needed to get into some of our campaigns, and one of the biggest issues there was that, of course, they were going to deliver a 30-second spot, and it was going to be, exactly as it needed to be, and there would be no additional production costs that wanted to be associated with that, right? Slap it on Facebook and rinse and repeat. But we know that doesn't work. So, convincing your client, working with them to understand what the platform's needs are and how you could take a great piece of content like a hilarious Bon Jovi spot and turn that into a hilarious Bon Jovi Facebook video, it requires some production dollars, but it doesn't require a ton of production dollars. It just takes, that onus is on you as the agency to have that kind of conversation with them and get them to understand where you need to go with that piece of content to make it work in that platform.
Right on. So, Keith, do you have anything to add from like an outsider's perspective, kind of on that?
I think that the complexity that you're seeing in terms of the rise of all of the platforms within the marketplace is creating a really interesting dichotomy between the way in which consumers engage with media and the way in which media is planned, bought, and created. And I believe that the ecosystem is one that is very healthy, that will continue to evolve between the client agency and content arena. But I do think that there will be an evolution within the agencies, and I think we're beginning to see it now in terms of restructuring how content is created and strategized versus how it's planned and bought. And you talk about going back and forth between different divisions or different areas. I look at something like the OTT space, and we have a tremendous amount of consumers engaging with us on devices like Apple TV, Samsung Smart Hub, Roku, the Fire, all of these devices. And there's no agency that looks at it the same way. Right? Half the agencies think that it's digital because of the assets. Half the agencies think that it's television because of the assets. In the beginning, I said, we're looking more at it, forgetting about the platform, but looking at the experience. What is the experience? Over a device, the experience is really you're viewing it, reading it, or listening to it, right? And then everything else just falls into a subset. And I do think that there will be an evolution in the agencies in the way that they strategically think and plan to align against experiences. So that way, as creatives can start developing things, it becomes easier for that alignment from what the client's perception of the consumer journey is, what the consumer's perception of the journey is, and what the agency can more easily facilitate for them.
Great. Thanks. So let's talk about data. We've talked about it a little bit already, but how is data, being cast off by online campaigns, how is it informing the creative video process? Has creative truly become more data-driven? Can you give us some really good examples?
Yeah. So I've done this back and forth where I bounce back and forth from traditional agency to digital agency, traditional agency, digital agency, and the thing I love about working more in digital than traditional is it's so easy to know when you're right and so quick. It's like you could just you got it, that's working, or you don't have it and it's not working. But that ability is just incredible. And some of the stuff that YouTube is doing now, where you can just do these like quick pilots, just bang something out for a week, see how it's going, get some good data back. Tweak it a little bit or throw it in the trash and start over and come back with something else. Like that iterative process, was impossible, but when you're, flying around the world shooting a $4 million TV spot. So I love it. I love it. I embrace getting as much data as humanly possible. The problem lies, and this is something that I struggle with, in our organization, because I think that there are some, as this is evolving, right? This is requiring new ways of thinking. One of the things that I get a lot and rail against is facts. Like, facts don't help us. You can come to us and you can say, here are a bunch of numbers, and here's a bunch of facts. That in no way helps a creative create a piece of work that is going to impact that audience.
You need the insight.
You need the insights. I don't even know what that means. What do these numbers mean? What does that mean to the person? What does that mean that they like? That person isn't a robot. What do they care about? How is this going to matter to them in this environment? But once you can get the right planners and the right strategists that are going to be able to work with you and collaborate on ingesting all that data and turning it into insights, that's when you can start to create amazing stuff. And even before you create amazing stuff, you'll have the right measurement program in place so that as you start to get the data back, you can iterate, you can plan for what to do next. And I love it. The more data, the better, as long as we're turning it into insights.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I also think it helps in times where you're struggling as a creative to find the answer, it's within the insight. It's right there in front of you. You just need to answer its call, if you will. Because even with going back to the Strayer example, when we do a lot of documentary type of content where we try to identify individuals that possess that quality that Strayer believes so firmly in, which is success. So we know that the key insight is the audience, the people who are attending Strayer, the students, are these people who have never gone to school before or going back to school after a long time. They're in student debt, and then they're having to face the decision of going back into school, going to more into debt. These are things that plague them and keep them up at night. I'm still paying off my student loans, so I totally empathize with that, and what that could possibly mean for your family if you're the first person in your family to go to college, and what that example could be for your children. So when I'm thinking about those insights in terms of the audience and the targeting, I could look at it from who are we filming, how are we going to tell that story and shape it so when we put that out there, you see yourself in that story being told. And then in the targeting part, I love how, very niche that you could get and identify the exact right person that needs to see that particular message, whether that be the 2-minute cut or the shorter cut, and then what that might be in terms of how we segment them out, where maybe they're seeing this one 10-second version or a 15 and it drives to another piece or towards the site to take you further down the funnel. So I feel like the insight and the data, and once again, you're going to hear me say a lot today, the science working with the magic of the creative, that needs to work hand in hand or it's just going to all fall apart.
I think it was the CMO of Netflix made a comment 2 years ago that his North Star was to see their ad campaigns go to the right person at the right device in the right place at the right time in the right mood in the right weather in the right temperature. And I think that is a wonderful aspiration. Someone the other day said to me, and I thought it was brilliant, he said, data is at a point today where it can stalk you or it can harass you. But it's not yet getting to the point where it's providing intelligence in the realm that you talk about it, that you aspire to it. We have, at Bloomberg, this is a self-serving comment, but it also has value to the audience in this, is we have a group called Bloomberg Intelligence, which is actually part of the core terminal audience or offering that we have. And what I found absolutely fascinating about it is that this is a group who does not provide subjective perspective. They only provide objective analysis, and they have to, because in the financial world, they make all of their success, like we make all of our money not by telling people whether to buy or sell, but rather here are the facts with no bias, and how do you then make a decision from those facts? And what we found was that this Bloomberg Intelligence Unit can actually provide tremendous amount of reports to even our customers on very simple topics that show how trends are moving in a direction that can position our clients to be very successful. And the example their perspective by the store, you get an ad, you either walk in, you walk out, right? And the insight that we were able to glean in terms of, from an intelligence perspective, was very simple. If you looked at the entire competitive set of McDonald's, including brands like Starbucks, the CEO and the CFO of Starbucks, in their earning reports, like as they're at their quarterly earnings, used the word mobile 5 times as much as their competitive set. Right? And so now think about that. If you step back and you're like, okay, so how is that applying itself to life or reality? And what we found was, think about how many people in the audience have the Starbucks app on their phone?
I love that. Thanks so much.
Okay.
Hashtag free drinks.
So, but that's what I love about what you just said? Like, that is the best example of they took the retail experience and they actually turned it 2 ways, right? So, like, I walk down the street, I'm 4 blocks away from a Starbucks. I don't think it's possible in New York City to be 4 blocks away from any Starbucks. No. So you're like, I'm 1 block away at any given moment from a Starbucks. And all of a sudden my phone goes, Keith, do you want, a grande dark roast? And all of a sudden I say, yeah, I do. And they made it so easy for me. Right? And now all of a sudden I start thinking about, wow, this retail experience has moved from 1 way to 2 ways. And I think that when you can start realizing that Starbucks is not advertising that they've shifted retail 2 ways, right? But all the data is showing that that's what they're doing. And when you could start taking insights like that, intelligence like that, and handing it over to creatives and saying, okay, now think about this transformation, think about this trend, and how would you apply your magic to that trend? That's when things become really powerful, and that's when things become really successful.
And sometimes it might be a odd stat or a weird stat. You know, we just recently did this thing for TD Bank where they wanted to sell more HELOCs, home equity lines of credit. And they had all this data, all like reams of data on who their audience was and where they lived and things, you know, all this stuff. And there was one data point that stood out to me, which was that in average, it takes the American 9 years to go from saying, hey, I'd like to, you know, fix up my kitchen, to actually fixing their kitchen. Like 9 years is a tremendous amount of inertia, right? And I mean, we built the entire campaign around that one stat, and you know, it was the video, and there was a tour, and all this other stuff. But you know, just this idea that the media buy, the creative, the content that we were making, you know, we partnered with HGTV and Scripps, like all the stuff that we did. You know, put everyone in the Hearst Tower to work on this thing against this one stat.
I mean, look, if success was prescriptive, right, if we could define it, then we all wouldn't have a job, right? The reality is that the magic, the thing that connects with consumers is that fleeting moment that will actually become more extreme with the more immediate sort of way in which they're getting information. And the easiest testament to that is look at sports highlights today. Like, they're utterly boring on when you tune in for them on TV because you've already seen them, so you have to see the most extreme things.
Yeah, I mean, you had a question. I don't know if we're going to get to it, but what's the thing that I'm very unhappy about with online video, and that's it. I mean, I think the shelf life of the stuff that we've created has just dwindled to nothing. And you know, I mean, you know, you think about how many times, you know, this is just topical, right? How many times you watched the BMW films when they first came out. I mean, you watched them multiple times, right? It was a big deal. They were really cool. Like, when they come out again, are you going to watch them multiple times, or are you going to watch them one and done? Are you going to watch them on different platforms, or are you just going to watch them on YouTube and be done with it? Like, that's the thing I lament. And I think that you can still try to make incredible content, and you will reach those people who will love it. But to your point of the highlights, like, the shelf life of the work that we create is just, it's tough.
It feels like there's someone like hoarding all this stuff in a basement somewhere. You know, they're like,
in
I'll use it
100
someday.
years, there'll be a museum
Exactly.
of this amazing stuff.
The only thing to that I would counter is, and I do agree with you today, in this moment it's true, but you know, if you think about, I think that there's a point where things become so extreme that all of a sudden they sort of re-normalize. And I think like the rise of Snapchat is a great example of that. You know, people got so extreme with social media and posting everything online that the next generation that saw the perils of that all of a sudden realized that that they didn't want everything online forever. They wanted sort of a fleeting moment, and they wanted their privacy, right? And so, and I've said this for years, that in this notion that in the 70s, if the great saying of Andy Warhol was everyone wants their 15 minutes of fame, today I would argue that the saying would be everyone wants their 15 minutes of privacy, right? And I think that like you constantly see this battle of extremes that push people in one direction, push people in another direction. But you know, like I find that I actually read more books today than I've ever read in my entire life. The only difference is that I don't read them in paper. I tend to read them on this device, but it's still reading, and it's still long-form books, and it's still amazing. And so, you know, I think that there's this battle that keeps coming back and forth with the extremes. I don't envy, you know, the struggles that you have to face in terms of creating sometimes fleeting content, but I do think that there's a moment where if you create something great, like people still will talk about it, right? People still talk about the Oreo moment at the Super Bowl. People still talk about, you know, I saw this ad for Cheerios, you know, and like Be a Dad, and I don't know if you've seen this one, but it is unbelievable, and I've watched it 100 times, and it's like 4 minutes long, right? It's a completely non-standard ad unit, but you can see it on YouTube. But I think that you find that we tend to, again, execute in the extremes and envy the extremes, but then things sort of don't go in that direction all the time.
Right, so there's the fleeting nature of creative and how long it lasts these days, but then there's also the insane targetability of digital and how that's kind of at odds with, you know, the cost and the bother of devising creative for these smaller niches, right? So how have you creatives learned to balance versioning and targeted creative with scale and ROI?
I mean, I think something like programmatic both excites me and then scares me because it's like, wow, I could get like really, 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 really niche with who I'm targeting. Like someone who's considering to go on vacation like 2 weeks from now to a specific area of Bermuda. They're left-handed. They dyed their hair red once. It was a tragedy and they need to be color corrected, like really niche. So, you know, but then kind of taking the integrity of what you originally had and then finding a way to slice it and dice it to speak to that person versus that same person who is right-handed, it's like, how am I compromising the original structure of the work just to slice and dice this, and how much am I actually changing it so it feels targeted to that person? Like, I've been through presentations with vendors where they're like, well, these are all the things that we can do. Like, if this is a car and we're trying to target people who like the color blue, in post we can color correct this and make this Volvo red instead of blue, or cerulean instead of blue, if you're really particular to blue, like super niche. And I feel like sometimes you're spending too much time thinking about what's the thing that we can change and not going back to the original insight of why you created that piece in the first place. So I like the scalability and the reach, and I think that's super exciting because at the end of the day, like, we want people to see our work. If we're just making it, I might as well just put it on a piece of paper and put it on my fridge and have my mom look at it when she comes over to visit me. And like, you know, that could be.
She'll love it.
Yeah, my mom loves everything I make. But you know, like, I love that people can see these things. And I feel like when it comes to that versus traditional media, if you're the standard copywriter or art director and you're a team and you've worked on an out of home, when you see that, you get that little like twinkle in your heart and you're like, yes, people have seen my stuff. Because digital's kind of everywhere and omnipresent, you lose kind of that specialness. But when you know that you're able to target those specific people and you just, you know, you can certainly look at the numbers to verify that people have seen these things. I feel like that's our version of the specialness. And then certainly shares and comments and likes, that's a little bit more front-facing.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we struggle with this. We're talking about like how much data and where the insights that you're going to get from this. You know, we spend a lot of time trying to understand who are going to be the MVPs out there, right? Who are going to be the people who are going to be the sweet spot for whatever we're talking about, and how many different audiences are there going to be that are the high-value ones, right? We're not going to make something for everybody. Just because there is one guy out there that we know that we could sell something to if we just tweak that message just to him, like, he's just one guy, you know? So, you know, we try to find the biggest pools of folks that are worth tailoring a message to, and then we give them the best message. So we do a lot of that with DirecTV. Obviously, people have a lot of different types of entertainment desires. DirecTV is obviously the sports leader, so then you have sports, and once you start to get into sports, then you start to get into regions, and then you start to get into displaced fans, and then it gets pretty granular very quickly. But those targets are high value targets. A displaced fan is and a displaced fan in certain markets at certain ages are extremely high value targets for DirecTV. So we do cater to them highly. You know, reality shows or whatever, they're not converting at the numbers we want, and while they are an important audience for us, we're not going to tailor a message for them. So, you know, it's all about doing the due diligence to figure out who are going to be the targets that are going to matter, and what are the stories that are going to resonate with them, and then really just like doubling down on those guys, but making something that is going to be quality for the more generic pool.
So, you know, I had a very interesting sort of moment a few weeks ago where I had this realization that if I changed the word creative to journalist, right? And it's sort of two ends of a very similar spectrum from the content producer. At Bloomberg, we produce 5,000 pieces of content a day, okay? That's essentially, to any one individual, it's infinite content, right? And there's some pieces of content that get 2 views. And there's some pieces of content that get 500,000 views. And what I'm looking at and thinking about is, what if those 2 views actually changed the market? Like, what if those two engagements were so much more valuable than the 500,000? It's the Ashton Kutcher example of 8 million followers on Twitter. He says, buy a Nikon, and nobody knows if anyone bought a Nikon. But you have, you know, a mommy blogger say, buy Method soap, and all of a sudden, if she has 500 followers, 500 bottles of Method soap within 24 hours goes, you know, off the thing. And so what I wonder about is, I actually, for you, I want you to feel comfortable. I think the world is going 100% programmatic on anything that can be digitized. I think it will.
I'm not that scared.
Don't think, okay, good. I just want to make sure that, because I think anything that can be digitized will. I don't think that means the death of the other things. I think that those things evolve. When it is digitized, the buying portion of it and the thinking portion of it will become programmatic. To your point, though, like, there has to be, enough has to be enough. There has to be a threshold where there's a diminishing return if you add further targetability, because even if you know that you have me as a consumer of one, if you get me on the wrong day, and it's a difference between a Tuesday or Wednesday, it means nothing. And so you need to have, if you have limited resources, and everyone ultimately has limited resources, you have to create creative that can go to the largest target of a niche audience that you could possibly get. And we have to lose this belief that we're always going to get the exact perfect. There will be an element of waste in that. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys for your insights. Unfortunately, I think we're out of time now, and we don't have time for questions from the audience. But if you guys stick around for a little bit, if anyone wants to continue the conversation outside or something, you can take it outside. We've got to move on to the next session. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thanks. That was fun. Just leave the mic. So-called fixed consumption, device consumption, this year, yet 75% of video spending still occurs on fixed devices. Why the disconnect? Well, here to ask these and other questions, we asked MediaPost senior reporter Gavin O'Malley to lead this panel. So please welcome Gavin and the panel to the stage.
Hello. How's everyone doing?
Great.
Good. I told someone earlier this is like Cannes without the Riviera. That got a bigger laugh from the person I was talking to. So, welcome, and can we just go down the line and have everyone introduce themselves, please?
Good morning. I am Jeff Hines. I am the U.S. Media Director for Mediacom from the digital perspective.
Ben Bring. I am the VP of Media for Ansible, which is the mobile arm of IPG Media Brands.
And I'm Rachel Pasqua. I lead the Connected Life practice at MEC. We're a center, well, MEC is part of an operating company of Group M, and the Connected Life practice is a center of excellence devoted to mobile in the broader sense, you know, smartphones, wearables, connected car and home, all things non-desktop.
Great. Well, thank you for participating today. And so we were talking earlier on the phone and before we got up here, and I think at the risk of completely undercutting the premise of this panel, some of you said that, you know, well, I mean, do we really know that spending is trailing consumption?
Yeah, you know, I think there's a number of ways to look at this, and so I started off saying to myself, okay, where's the best place to determine is this a true fact? So I started with our investment team at Group M, and they said, of course, that's not true. We're spending more on mobile video than we are on mobile display. I said, okay, fine. Then I went and spoke to one of our more popular, larger social media vendors or partners and asked them that same question, and they said, it's not precisely correct, but there is some truth in that statement that more money is going to display in the mobile arena as opposed to video, even though video consumption is 2 to 3 times higher in the mobile arena. So I said, fine. Then I actually looked at media plans, and looking at media plans, I think that you can see that clients are resistant to put mobile video on the media plans for a number of reasons. And I think really that's the core of this discussion, is how do we overcome certain barriers and how do we make this a much better product offering and value proposition to our clients based on a number of factors.
Sure. And Ben, you had
Yeah,
something to add?
I echo a lot of what you're saying, right? It's all about deciding what the source of truth should be, and it's pretty hard in this industry. So whether it's your vendors, your internal planning, I think for us, we're seeing spend increase, which is certainly what we want to see. But there are some of the challenges that were just alluded to around what are clients really doing. I think programmatic kind of skews the line and adds a lot of gray area, and it also starts to get us into a place where folks might be taking mobile video for granted. As an extension of digital, which is fine in some respects, but maybe not in others.
And Rachel, you told me that we have to be careful about.
I think it's arguable too that we're not accounting for things that we don't see clearly because, say you do a big upfront 3-screen buy or all-inclusive buy with a big publisher, an AOL and ESPN. Video is going to be part of that, and do you really know upfront how much of that video ends up consumed on mobile versus the desktop? So there might be a lot of video that you're buying not as specifically mobile that ends up being consumed on mobile devices. So I think there's a lot that we don't see clearly.
Right, the dedicated issue we were talking about. I mean, dedicated mobile, it's dangerous to do that at a time when top platforms like Facebook are spending the majority of their money on mobile, right?
I'm sorry, could you clarify what's dangerous to do what?
Just dedicated in terms of we were talking earlier about considering dedicated mobile.
As the only thing you're doing in mobile. Yeah. I mean, there's all sorts of trapdoors there. If you're only counting that, you're not, all sorts of other things come into play because if you're buying digital video and you're not considering that maybe 50% of that will be consumed on mobile, then you're not paying careful enough attention in most cases to the creative experience on that video, the length edited or verticalized so that it will be successful on the platform on which it is consumed. So yeah, I think there are trapdoors there for sure.
And I think that gets to the point we were discussing earlier that a lot of our clients are TV-centric clients, and they're not creating the types of formats that are acceptable or do well in the mobile space. And whether that's a client issue or a creative issue, I think that inhibits the media planning team to really think about mobile in an environment that they can drive success based on what the publishers are creating.
I think that's everyone's issue. Really, you can't point any one finger because you could say, well, the creative agencies are just shooting for TV and then you can cut down those assets and do whatever you want with them. And yeah, you can to a certain extent. Everyone would benefit if from the very beginning of the creative process, we were thinking about all the different screens. We're going to shoot this, this angle for Snapchat. We're going to shoot this setup for YouTube. And but the creative agencies need the clients to mandate that and ask for it. The media agencies need need to have that dialogue with both the client and the creative agency. So it needs to be a general consensus among all three from the very beginning.
I think, too, there's also a way that we can work with our partners, especially in the mobile space. We've done some work with clients and our mobile video vendors to test different types of creative and test it against non-skippable ad formats and look at things like entertainment, utility, and information, which one resonates better from a creative perspective, whether you're dealing with 15 seconds or 30 seconds or even 5 seconds, and then how does targeting lay on top of that. So I think we collectively, clients, the agencies, and the mobile video partners need to work together to try and figure this out.
Yeah, and it's about placing your video assets in the best possible place, right? We're seeing time spent in-app way outweigh mobile web, and I think the video executions there are a much better opportunity for us as marketers. Mobile web is a little janky, a little slow, et cetera. So it starts at the creative top, right? How are we thinking about that? And then where are we actually placing it? And then underpinning it is what is determining success, as you mentioned, right? So we've continued to look at different things like quartiles, buying on completed views, et cetera. And I don't think that's maybe resonating at this point with some of our clients. They obviously want to see dollars and cents at the end of the day. So what can we do to show that in a more concise way? We know the engagement is there. We know that people are willing to engage with brands in a value exchange type of setting. But I think it's disseminating what the true value is there for our clients in some instances. And once we get there, I think we'll see a continued hockey stick growth.
Any clients in particular?
For us, without naming too many names, I'd say we're going through a pretty large exercise with one of our autos to reassess what's a real KPI for mobile. And I think this certainly applies to video, but it applies for everything, right? You know, it's just amazing, and you probably hear this in every session, that we're still defaulting to click-through rate because we're trying to apply non-mobile first approaches sometimes to our mobile, to our mobile programs and getting returns that are soft at best. So it's about removing some of those, thinking about it differently, and these are long and hard thought processes, right? You have folks who are vested in their business, been with these companies for 30 plus years, feel like they know what's worked, are really not willing to change. So this is an ongoing conversation, I think, for everybody, and something that we love to be a part of, but has a lot of travel to go.
I know you're not a big fan of click-through rates.
I don't know anybody who really is at this point.
Oh, and there's so many more interesting things that are surfacing. I mean, we're looking at shoppable video for a number of our DR clients to see, whether we can actually get people to examine a product and put it in a shopping cart, or do something that's a lot more meaningful than just a completed view, but in action. But I've seen some really interesting companies kind of on the fringe, and this stuff is a little further out, but companies that through mobile and using the gyroscope and the accelerometer can tell whether people are actually physically engaged. Does their posture change? Are they moving? Are they you'll be able to tell whether people are really having a visceral reaction to what they're watching in a way that you wouldn't in the desktop because, they're not really engaged with that device and it doesn't move. Eye tracking, telling whether, because, there's a difference between looking at something and waiting for it to be finished and really seeing it. And we're seeing more technologies that are going to be able to really tell, did someone look? Did they have rapid eye movement? Were they really engaged? What part of the video really caught their attention? I mean, things that just make click kind of a ridiculous metric.
I think that's all fascinating, and I think that's, where a lot of our clients are leaning in and asking us to look to the future and how do we address, dynamic creative in the mobile video space, and is it as simple as, creating a bunch of assets and then using targeting capabilities to deploy those assets, but that in itself, in the environment that you're explaining, would be an ultimate way to do that, and a fantastic to really, both with their technology and their environment and their behavior, and then you layer on top of that artificial intelligence, which is coming into the mobile video space, right? And that is going to make it very interesting and exciting. And that's a way for us to then sell in more mobile video to clients. Here's artificial intelligence, here's dynamic creative, here's the way to use the phone and the technologies and capabilities of the phone prescribes. And that gives clients reasons to say, okay, mobile video makes sense for me because it's exciting, it's new, it's refreshing, and we can get some learning from it that we can't get elsewhere.
I mean, that type of analysis is super, super interesting, right? I mean, Android's releasing this type of functionality. So I think it's got a ton of value when we just kind of look at it from a high level without digging in too deep, but I think we still foundationally have to fix some of the creative issues, right? Like we talked about before, so super cool, cheap, much cheaper way theoretically to do it than the way that we do it, having 20 people in a room and watching and, their eyes dart back and forth on these little screens. Yeah. So it'll be cool for sure.
Yeah, well, I think that the problems that we have to fix are more human problems and workflows and process, which unfortunately I think probably are harder to fix than technical problems, but...
Yeah, you talk about very large, Fortune 100 and 500 companies that are big ships in their own right, tack on relatively big agencies in their own right, creative agencies, large as well, and just getting, a melding of the minds can be difficult, if not for just trying to get everybody in the same room at the same time. So I think the direction for agencies in my relatively limited time on the agency side is pointing to try to make that a little bit more seamless, but it's definitely, again, an ongoing process that I think we're trying to work through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think Jeff's point about AI was interesting too, because before the panel we were talking about messaging and bots, because most of the conversational commerce opportunity now, you're going to see that everywhere, and there's Alexa and there's IBM Watson, but most of the AI bot-driven conversational opportunity is happening in the messaging platform. So I think we agreed that that's a really interesting place to watch when it comes to mobile video, because that's where that AI-driven mobile video experience could really come to fruition, because you interact with that Kickbot or that Facebook bot over time, and they're going to know more and more what to send you, as opposed to, random targeting.
Yeah. So you told me earlier that publishers, consciously or unconsciously, might be resisting this, the transition to mobile, because it messes with their yields, and is that something that you're all finding?
No, I had an interesting conversation last night at another dinner with someone who argued the opposite point and said that The publishers have a vested interest in pushing more investment to mobile because they have more mobile inventory than they can monetize. Whereas I kind of felt that, because quite often if you ask publishers to break down their, if you're doing direct publisher buys and you ask publishers to break down their placements up front, some of them will really balk at it and won't want to do it, and probably in large part because there's a lot of work involved, and some of the smaller ones maybe can't do it as efficiently. But my initial supposition was that they're not going to want to do it because so much attention is going to mobile and the mobile inventory is cheaper, that it will siphon away investment from the more valuable desktop inventory. But I don't know, based on this discussion the other night, maybe not. All I can tell you is I know that it's not happening as much as it should happen, and there seems to be a little resistance on the publisher side to doing it.
I would say that a year ago that would be true, that publishers were looking to push more to video, and for the simple fact that if given the choice, pushing to video means they didn't have to adhere to viewability standards a year ago like they did in display, so it was easier for them to move the inventory in a manner that was best for their business. That's been changing given technology and different video viewability partners that the industry's been working with. So I think that dynamic has shifted back to kind of an even playing field between display and video in the mobile space.
Yeah, I think they're just, it's some of the things that you just said, right? Do they even have the bandwidth maybe to kind of embed some video? Is it worth their time? Are they seeing the yields? The yield managers has become a very powerful job for these folks. And if they're still seeing more demand for their standard ad units and rich media, then how much time are they really going to invest? We can certainly push them to that direction, but it has to come from our clients. It has to come through the agencies ourselves and then through. Again, it's growing. There's no doubt about it. But the same way that we have to prioritize, I think some of our larger publishers may have over the years. The bigger guys are able to somehow move faster, but some of the smaller guys a little less so, right? Because they're just par for the course still works for them.
So on the topic of platforms, what platforms, Facebook, Hulu, Google, are helping and hurting this, the shift?
I'd argue that it's a double-edged sword, right? So obviously there's a ton of engagement across these. We constantly work with Facebook, we work with Hulu, and we run a lot of video inventory there. But these are specific times of the day that are being spent. So I think the negative side of that is you dump all of your mobile video budget into these platforms, but you don't necessarily, again, understand the value of reaching out outside of these. So when we look at stats, I think Facebook is 25% of the time spent in mobile. Huge number, don't get me wrong, but there's still 75% of time spent on a mobile device during the average person's day that you can connect with them in the right place. So how do we communicate that effectively to our clients to show them that, your Facebook, again, creative maybe shouldn't be the same as it is for something that's living in a content-driven site or even gaming, right? So gaming is a fantastic place for value exchange video. We see a couple of companies that are doing it really well. I think there's still a little hesitation from kind of your blue chip clients to be comfortable living in those worlds, but I think those are big opportunities to really spread it out.
What clients? Sorry.
That's right. What clients specifically? We really have that conversation with every single one of them. So the portfolio includes everyone from FCA, like I mentioned, to Sony, Exxon, BMW, Johnson & Johnson. So that's kind of our general mantra that we try to press forward, and it's relevant to not just video, but just anywhere you're trying to engage somebody on their mobile devices. Moment targeting is this new buzzword for the year, right? And there's moments certainly happening in Facebook, and Google is kind of going down this path. But if you're really trying to find somebody in the right place, it's not going to be in the same place every single time, based on all the other kind of targeting signals you're looking at.
Yeah, I think they're all helping in that they're providing the exposure and the eyeballs on mobile devices for video, which is fantastic. However, they're hurting in that they're not potentially adhering to the needs of the industry from a targeting perspective, viewability, pricing, flexibility in packages and contracts, things of that nature. So that's where they could potentially do a better job in working with agencies to create that environment that sees success for everyone.
Okay.
I can't say it any better than these two have.
Well, so I'll just take this opportunity to ask if you guys have made your peace with Facebook regarding the recent measurement issue, the video measurement issue.
There was a measurement issue?
Well, usage.
Everyone might not be aware.
I think, from our perspective, just speaking for not on behalf of Group M, but from a position perspective with my clients, we don't buy on those standards with Facebook. We buy on a different buying model, so it doesn't affect us. However, what it does speak to is the thought of transparency and accountability in overall measurement, and whether that measurement is part of the buy process or part of the view process, and how do we make sure that what we're being informed with and the information that is being used to negotiate is correct and accurate, and gives our clients a sense of comfort, as well as gives us the opportunity to understand what truly consumers are doing, which is the whole brunt of the discussion was, what's the value proposition in those numbers, and is it real or is it not real?
So it's a trust issue, you would say?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's disconcerting, again, when we talk about who's the real source of truth, right? I think a lot of folks look to Facebook as that, whether it's certainly their data on their audiences and so on. But when you start to look at the research around how people are engaging or lack thereof with advertising in their news feeds, and then something like this comes out about how they're kind of validating their video products, the two kind of make sense in a little bit. They're probably seeing the same things that we're seeing, and trying to, again, validate and keep the pressure on for their video product with advertisers. But again, to some of my earlier points, maybe this is a little bit of a tipping point to look at other places. Again, but probably most disconcerting is just the fact that they're looked at so prominently as kind of a real source of truth, and this impinges upon that.
Yeah, which I think, no discredit to Facebook, and I spend as much time on Facebook as the next person, but I think it's a mistake to look to any publisher as, the arbiter of any kind of standard. You have to understand that any kind of standard that a publisher puts out that's specific to them is going to be subjective and based on, on their interests to a great extent. So unless there's some sort of MRC accreditation that has been established and vetted by a third party and everybody is adhering to it, then I think you have to assume that there's going to be some gray areas.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's very fair, right? And that's part of the fragmentation that we deal with on a daily basis. We're kind of chasing our tails in some respects. I think Jeff mentioned earlier on, buying on a completed view just kind of mitigates that. And I don't understand why people would buy on anything else at this point. It's available. It's been around for years. So that's a simple fix in my mind, if you still feel the same way, Jeff.
Yes.
Well, it was also, if I understand the issue correctly, it's also the greater issue of this conception of how much time is spent on video on Facebook and how engaged people are, and the difference between 0 seconds and 3 seconds. So it's not just what we're buying on, but it's the overall image or concept that's being put out there that gets people all hot and bothered to buy video on Facebook.
Right. Yeah, and maybe 3 seconds is the right amount of time. But I don't know. It's hard to say, right? We're just all talking about short format at the moment, and there's not enough out there, at least in my purview, to say is 3 seconds better than 5 or 7 necessarily. And again, it goes back to where are you serving it? What are you trying to get across? And what outcome are you chasing?
You said an issue like this could potentially inspire you to look in other areas and other platforms. Any ones in particular?
Off the top of my head, we partner pretty heavily with folks like Opera, June Group a bit. Again, it's just about spreading it out. So more of your kind of network platform buys, doing things more programmatically at the end of the day. But again, that kind of creates its own issues around, measurement when we're looking at how much is actually being exposed in mobile versus not. It boils down to actually tactical campaigns set up in some instances. So, when you're talking about managed buys, you don't have a lot of visibility into that as much, or at least as much as you'd like. Programmatically, you should more, but it's certainly about spreading it out, in my opinion, in general. When we look again at just kind of the dollars spent in these inherently mobile platforms versus others, it's just incredibly disproportionate. And now we're seeing Messenger start to chew into that a little bit, not from a dollars and cents standpoint, but that's what we were talking about earlier, is how does mobile now play a part in these Messenger apps where folks like Facebook are seeing their users spend more time. And I think when you're talking about shared video, especially if it's sponsored video, that's what I'm excited for. I think it's, at least for me, it's a little early to see what the return is there, but that's where we're getting pretty bullish.
Okay. And on the topic of programmatic, can we talk more broadly about that and versus direct buys, how that might be affecting the shift to mobile spending?
I think it goes back to starting to take for granted mobile across the board and not accounting strategically or during your planning cycles for where this content and this creative is going to live, whether it's in-app, mobile web, are you targeting a certain carrier or location, et cetera. All these things are what we try to account for. When you kind of just chuck it into this digital programmatic bin, in my mind, in some instances, and maybe not all to be fair, it's just kind of letting the chips fall where they may. And when you're talking about pure reach and frequency, that's all well and good, but when you're getting more targeted, and there's obviously, I think they mentioned in the previous panel, there's a point of diminishing returns where you can go way too deep, you're not necessarily going to get that. So I think there's a long way to go. I think it's advanced tremendously what we can do programmatically, but it's not entirely there yet. And I think the biggest thing that people might be having a misconception around is that it's purely automated. It simply isn't. We've got a major trading desk. They keep hiring because they keep running more campaigns. So it's programmatic. Those algorithms are getting better. But again, I think we're just in an inflection point of mobile is just a part of digital, which is a fair statement, but in practice, not necessarily.
And not to keep putting you on the spot, Rachel, but we were talking earlier about a holding pattern in the industry, people generally going back to trying to establish solid viewability standards and such.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's holding digital investment back overall, but I think trying new things, differentiating your creative, investing in new platforms, adding in measurement. Yeah, I think we are in a bit of a holding platform while we figure a few things out. Like we were talking about dynamic creative, and this is probably more true for display than for video, but every bit of ad blocking is a concern in the industry in general, and every bit of data that you add to refine that creative and differentiate it adds latency. So I think there's a lot to figure out before most brands and agencies feel comfortable diving into all of these new platforms and areas.
Okay. So going back to the forecast issue, there was a Zenith forecast recently that suggested that this is going to be a very slow transition. Are we all in agreement that that is the case, the shift to mobile spending? Over years we're talking about.
I mean, it's maybe slowed a bit to what it was. Having been in this space specifically for quite some time, we saw kind of our major rise, and then it's plateaued a little bit for some of the complexities that have been mentioned around measurement and just general thought process and value. I agree it is slowing a bit. It's hard to say when it may pick back up, and what is critical mass, right, is the other question. Do we have to spend $50 billion in mobile video to say that it's finally arrived? What is that threshold as well, is what I'd question.
I think $5 billion is a good number. I go with that. Ross, questions?
We can do questions from the... Is this on? Hello? Oh, it's back on. Yeah, anyone has a question from the audience, just a reminder, please stand, tell us who you are, where you work. Are there any questions? It's Rosanna again. Hello, is it Rosanna? Welcome back.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Rosanna Jacqueline. I'm with LVB Global. The question I have for all of you is we're talking about video within the context of the online platforms and with social, and we're looking at sort of the amount of time everybody's spending on their devices. How do the platforms like Twitter, Instagram, et cetera, enter the video content that you're all talking about?
Well, I think for us specifically, it's kind of, again, your same video assets that are just being run there and being put there because that's what people are comfortable with, unfortunately. I almost kind of separate those platforms as social platforms, whether they're mobile or not in some instances, So I think you should actually create your content differently in those environments than you would on kind of general network buys, if you will, on content-driven sites, gaming, what other verticals you may look at. So that's the way that we kind of divide the two, but for the moment, it is your standard video assets that we get handed from the creative agencies in many cases that will run there as well as other places.
I would agree, and just want to add that from a targeting perspective, if there are ways, excuse me, you can look at those platforms with different targeting than you would with other platforms. That's one way to sub-segment your decision process.
Great. Any other questions? We take maybe one more before we head into a break. Oh, one in the back.
Thanks. Hey guys, Trevor Hamilton with Boxfish. Just curious, quick question on overall just spend. I know we talked a little bit about budgets, and there's been a lot of discussion and debate in the industry regarding if, how, and when we'll start to see greater TV spend start to trickle over to digital. Jeff, heard you mention, your big roster of TV clients, and that's obviously a big part of your business. Just sort of curious to know what is going to be required to really see it truly happen at greater scale and I guess just market penetration and whatnot. Is it measurement? Is it just consumer consumable devices? Just get your feedback on that. Thanks.
I think it's just continuing to prove out the value of digital, and that can be viewed as something as simple as a mixed modeling analysis, where is it proving out that digital is performing better than television, or it can be proven out just from simple foot traffic, and anecdotally. So I think that's the hurdle, and why you're seeing television spending slowing in its movement from TV, or spending from TV to digital. And there's been some questions from clients as to the effects of the value of digital when it addresses their overall marketing objectives.
I think there's also a little bit of a false positive happening. Like, we do see dollars shifting over, but TV is getting more expensive as inventory declines as well. So you've got this number that's kind of staying flat, maybe flattening out more than it has in the past. But when you're talking about actual impressions, the decline is happening, and it's inherently heading to the digital side of the fence.
And then the definition of TV is inevitably becoming a little bit more intertwined with digital. We're doing a lot of, 3-screen, targeting of mobile with broadcast. There's a lot of interesting conversations happening around OTA. So the definition of what is TV is changing a bit as well. Yeah. And I think that will certainly help.
Okay, thank you, Gavin. Thank you, panel. We're out of time. That was great. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
So we're going to do a quick 15-minute coffee break, followed by a real treat, which is a fantastic interview between Joe Mandizzi and ANA Chairman Tony Pace. So please stick around for that. We'll see you back here at 11:15. Thank you.